different varieties that are out there. And my husband and I made the decision to start our daughter in homeschooling. And so we just finished our first year of homeschooling in terms of homeschooling her, and it's been great so far. So one of the main reasons that we chose to homeschool is honestly flexibility. We like to travel. We like to see family. We both work from home. And so we like to have the flexibility to be able to do that. But I will introduce you to our next guest on here, Beth Eidmiller. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and why you chose to homeschool?
Well, we just finished our 10th year of homeschooling. I have 4 boys. They range from 14 to 4. We started homeschooling in the beginning with my oldest 10 years ago, and then he merged into the brick and mortar school 3 years ago, and I'm still homeschooling the younger 3. And we homeschooled really because we wanted to have flexibility. And well, I have boys, and if you have boys, you understand. They need to be able to run, jump, play, hop. And I really just couldn't see them sitting still and succeeding at 5 or 6 years old. And so we chose to start out and see, how that would work. And it's worked great for us. I mean, we've loved the opportunities. I also work part-time at home and part-time in an office. So I've collaborated with my mom. She homeschooled my sister and I for a similar experience with Beth. I was homeschooled. I was in private school, public school. And so she's been, my right-hand man helping me get the boys to where they're at today. So that's pretty much sums up our story.
Yeah, that's awesome. Becky Marr, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Becky, and I have 6 kids. I have, my oldest is 10 and my youngest is 2. We've been homeschooling for 5 years, and it's funny, I didn't want to start out homeschooling. And when my husband and I were discussing it, I was a public school teacher prior. And I thought down the line, it would be good to experiment with it. And my husband's wisdom, he said, why don't you just start off trying it and see how it goes? So I'm really glad he pushed me to do that, because I've enjoyed starting off with the early ages. And I would agree with the flexibility, the freedom. I love that we're able to cultivate like an independent, lifelong learner. And I think that's where we've started out. And just year by year, making that decision of what's best for each kid. And that's where we're at right now.
That's awesome. All right. Karen Peterson, she is actually my mom who homeschooled me. And tell us a little bit about your history of homeschooling, what you're doing now, and what you think are some of the benefits.
Okay. I started homeschooling when homeschooling was barely legal. As recently as 1980, homeschooling was illegal. And so it was kind of we were doing something that was kind of new and frontier-like. But there were a couple of reasons I homeschooled. One was the school that, let's see, how can I put this? My daughter she wasn't being challenged in public school. She was gifted, I'd say. And I asked the teacher to, do something to challenge her, and she just gave her more worksheets. And I understand what it's like to be a teacher. I'm a certified teacher myself. And I know it's hard, it's a challenge to meet everybody's needs. But I felt that she could be so much more if I schooled her. But also, I felt like the classroom was not giving her, and the peers she was with, and some of the things they were doing were not teaching the values that I wanted to teach my daughter. And I came across a statistic that about anywhere from 85 to 92% of children from Christian homes that go through public school do not carry on the faith, whereas 94% of children from homeschooled Christian homes do carry on the faith. And it was really important for me. And as I worked in the high school and junior high, and I saw these kids just who were Christians, but with peer pressure and negativity, by some of the staff and stuff, they kind of let their faith go by the wayside. So I didn't want that to happen to my children. So
yeah. That's a good point. There's so many different reasons that you could homeschool. And just to give you a quick kind of why we're doing what we're doing right now is that I don't believe that homeschooling is the number one only right choice for everybody.
right.
I think that every family has a unique situation. Every family has a unique culture. You know, every child is different and every stage of that child's life is a little bit different. And so it's really important for you as the parent to really look at each year and say, okay, what's the right choice for our family? What's the right choice for our children or our child this year? And to really do, because there were years that I went to private school, years that I went to public school, years that I was homeschooled, and the same for my brother. And so it may be different each year with your family. And so we kind of wanted to answer a lot of people right now with the quarantine and everything that's been happening, the uncertainty about the fall. There's still so many decisions being made. A lot of people are thinking about homeschooling who maybe have never thought about it before, or maybe you have thought about it, but our current circumstances has kind of pushed you to find out more and quickly. So we just wanted to provide some answers to some common questions, and feel free, like I said, to put something in the comments if you have an additional comment. And we would love to answer that as well. But we're going to go ahead and just answer some of those basic questions. And for you guys, I'll kind of touch on when to do it. And if you can mute yourself when you're not talking, that would be great. And then we can keep everything good. But the first question we want to answer is, how in the world do you go about choosing a curriculum? This is something that a lot of people ask. How do you choose a curriculum? What kind of things are out there? So I want to kind of open this up to our whole panel. How did you go about choosing a curriculum, and what kind of options are there for people? Beth, do you want to start us off?
Oh, sure. Well, I love curriculum. I spend a lot of time every year, and Becky and I've spent a lot of time back and forth, passing books and forth. When I started out, I was like, oh, I know about Abeka because that's what I was homeschooled with. So I immediately went to Abeka and got all their stuff. Abeka is it's a great program. It's very intense though. It's a lot. And so we burned out on that pretty quickly. But there are pieces of it I still use. There are so many resources online for being able to read and review about curriculum. There's just tons of websites that you can go to that will review the curriculum, give you samples. I think you have to know your learner a little bit too, and see. I spent one year where I thought we were going to do lap books and read living books, and it was just going to be this wonderful Charlotte Mason education. My kids hated it. So we didn't do that. They kept asking me when we were going to stop doing all these crafts. So we don't do that anymore. They're more of a textbook, worksheet, get it done kind of an attitude. And so that's kind of where we've gone. It doesn't stop me every year from looking at new things and buying books and having them. My husband keeps asking me how many more textbooks and curriculum pieces we have to collect. But if you put in homeschool curriculum, you can pull up Kathy Duffy, you can pull up the Well-Trained Mind Forum, Confessions of a Homeschooler. Those are all great resources that have reviews and tons of information about different curriculum. So
yeah, that's good.
Kind of our experience.
And I think it's also helpful to know that you're not stuck with any one curriculum. Most homeschooling parents that I know actually find the pieces that work for them. So if you feel totally overwhelmed, like when I started, I was like, there's too many choices. Abeka is a great place to start, especially if you're starting a young kid like kindergarten, because you can kind of pick and choose what you want to. You can get something that's totally already done for you, and it's like, here, just follow do this on this day, do this on, you can just completely have it laid out for you. But if you want to kind of start to put together your own package, you can. And a lot of people at the end of the school year or even halfway through are like, you know what, this one's not working for us. Let's find a different math book. And you totally have the freedom to do that, which is one of the great things about homeschooling. What about you, Becky? How do you go about choosing curriculum for your kids, especially since you have so many ages?
Yeah, I would say if you're just starting out, one of the most important things is do what's comfortable for you, first of all, as the teacher. And what I did to start off with is I actually asked some other homeschool moms that I happened to come across and said, could I just come over and take a look at some of the things you use? And that really helped me. I started to flip through it, I gained confidence that way. So I would encourage anyone that doesn't even know where to begin, just start asking other homeschool moms questions, or just going over and asking, what do you use? Can I take a look at it? I've been to a couple conventions, which have been helpful, where you can go look at endless numbers of curriculums. But those are very helpful as well. There's one in Cincinnati called the Great Homeschool Convention. There's also one in Columbus, so not too far away. But yeah, just do what is comfortable to you, and then start to add in more as you go. Or like you said, Beth, to alter things if it's not working. So what's comfortable to you, I think, is really most important in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't know any homeschool moms, there's a lot of Facebook groups that are devoted to homeschooling. So that's another great place. Just start looking for some Facebook groups about homeschooling. See if you can find one in your area or even in nationwide. And you can get some ideas in there and ask some questions. And there's a great place. Any thoughts on curriculum, Karen? Mom? You can unmute yourself there.
Sorry, I'm working on it here. Yeah, what they said is you have to see what are your children's personality and what is your personality. I had we may cover this a little later, but I had a friend who had 4 kids, and she used a unit study curriculum, and it was all very creative, and they were always making suits of armor, or doing all kinds of stuff. And I thought, wow, that is so cool, but it's not me. Here's your workbook. It's like, I mean, so you have to see what is your style of teaching, and what kind of time do you have? And then what is your children's style of learning too? And what they said about the curriculum. Also, Kathy Duffy is a great resource. She does reviews of homeschool curriculum. I will put a link to her in the comments. You were good. I think.
Go ahead, Beth.
That's what's.
So I was just going to say that too. The other thing that with Caleb for kindergarten, I started out with this full curriculum. I mean, we had, a full complement of subjects. If you're starting out with a kindergartner or first grader, you can homeschool from Target.
Yeah, right.
Go to Target, all the dollar workbook, and you can do that. You do not have to buy a curriculum for that age group. I mean, literally for the next 2, and for my youngest who's coming up, I'm not buying a ton of stuff. I'm going to buy some dollar workbooks. I already have so many flashcards. And that's really all you need. You don't need to start out with a full schedule of, science and history and reading and writing and grammar. You don't need all that. You can go outside, you can get books from the library, and you can have a very low-key investment while you figure out who your kid is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've talked to a lot of moms that are, they have preschoolers, and they're looking to start homeschooling for preschool, and are stressed out about it. And let me just be totally honest with you. Preschool is not required. I know you have to check with your state and see what, the various requirements are for ages and those kind of things. But in terms of what it looks like to homeschool preschoolers do not need a full-fledged curriculum. What preschoolers need, the best education a preschooler can get, is imaginative play. So if your child is playing, they are learning, and that's even more valuable to them at that age than doing a workbook or having to memorize a bunch of things. So one of the most helpful things, and Beth has been a great coach for me in homeschooling, one of the most helpful things she has helped me see is that, don't put all of these expectations on yourself, and especially don't put them on your child, that we have to be getting through all these things and you have to keep up, because there's all this research that suggests that kids who actually wait to start school later and start learning to read later tend to do better in the long run. They are not behind. And kids who even waited a little bit to learn to read tend to be more lifelong readers, because if we start kids too early on too much structure when it comes to school, they get burned out on the idea of school. And by around 2nd or 3rd grade, they're not wanting to read. They're not. So take that pressure off of yourself and just begin to introduce some fun learning concepts in a natural way. And don't feel, especially not for preschool, even for kindergarten, don't feel like you have to have some structured, intensive plan set out. So that kind of leads into the next thing. Becky, tell us about like, how much does homeschooling cost? Can I afford it? What's it like with so many kids? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to put like a cost on it, or a dollar amount, I should say, because it's a personal choice. There are options out there, like Beth said, you can get things from Target, and there's free websites with all-inclusive curriculums that you can get for a whole entire grade level. And if you have access to a printer or a library, you really don't need to buy anything. So it's a personal choice. It's really hard to say. Early on, I would say you probably have most of the things you need already. As far as any tax benefits or grants, I have to say there's nothing that I'm aware of, unfortunately, at this point. There are a couple states that offer a little bit of tax flexibility, but you can Google those. Ohio is not one of them. But yeah, I would just say start off with basics and then add in more as you go, to see, what else you're wanting to add to your curriculum. So the cost is definitely a personal choice, and it's really hard to put a set dollar amount on it. Another option definitely is to buy a lot of used curriculum. Facebook groups are great for that.
Yeah. And I mean, there's textbook-based curriculum. There's also video-based curriculum where you can have your child watch the videos of a teacher teaching the concepts. If you're like, I just don't know how to teach this, you can purchase video curriculum, and a lot of things like Abeka, you can use the videos to instruct your child, and then you kind of just help make sure that they do the work. And there's also online live teaching curriculum. So there's lots of options out there. Some people are like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to do this. I'm not a teacher either. I don't have a certification. I don't have any training as an elementary school teacher or anything like that. But you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be certified or anything like that. And there's so many options out there that you can actually have even a teacher through video or online in your home if that's something that's important to you. So another question we get is like, what are the legal requirements? How do I do this legally and not get stressed out about it? Beth, can you speak to the legal aspect of that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Ohio is actually a great state to homeschool in because there are very, like Karen was saying, I mean, when my mom started homeschooling us in 1981, it was not legal in the state of Ohio. And so when they came up with guidelines,
you rebels.
In my basement, in the early 80s, like those guidelines have not changed. They've literally made one revision since the early 80s, and that was just last year. So Ohio requires you to send in a form at the start of your school year to notify your superintendent. I recommend personally the form on CHEO's website, CHEO's Christian Home Educators. Even if you're not, a Christian or doing a faith-based education, their form it's perfect. It has all the information that you need, and you go on there, you provide them that information. Basically, you're just stating that you're going to homeschool, your name, your address, your child's name, date of birth, and you agree that you're going to provide them with 900 hours of instruction. If you're going to homeschool with someone else or another family, you need to provide that information who will also be educating your child. And then you also provide them with a list of your textbooks. And when I started out, I would make photocopies of all of the tables of contents, and I would send that to them too. I don't do that anymore. I simply say, we're going to be using, story of the world, 1500 to 1600. We're going to be covering the Middle Ages. I provide a little explanation of what's in the book, and I list the textbooks. This is not a list of all the textbooks you have to use. If somewhere during the middle of the year, you're like, this is the most boring book we've ever read and we're throwing it away, that's fine. No one is going to check. Okay, you're basically just telling them. The state of Ohio does not require you to get permission. You are simply telling the superintendent you are going to homeschool. There didn't used to be a time frame that you had to turn that in, but now the state of Ohio has said you have to turn that in during the first week of school in your district. So if school is starting on August 15th, then by August 22nd, you have to notify your superintendent. They have 14 days to respond to you and send you a letter and say, we've received your notification, good luck. They can also come back and ask you more questions, but Honestly, in Ohio, I have not. I live in Brunswick. I have not found that to be the case. I have actually forgotten to send them my list of textbooks one year, and they just simply sent me back my letter and said, have a great year. So I don't believe that there's too many superintendents that are really looking to hunt down homeschoolers anymore. And then that's it. Then you just go about your day. You are not required to keep track of any hours. You are not required to keep track of anything. At the end of the year, you are required to provide some sort of assessment. And that would be either a standardized test score, or it would be a review of a portfolio of work by a licensed teacher. I have always done the portfolio. And so basically I've just kept a little bit of my kids' work through the year. And it's been reviewed at the end of the year by a teacher, and she signs off and says that my child has made progress. No one is saying, oh, they have to get to a certain level. They just have to say that in the fall, you were here, and in the spring, you moved forward. Whether that was a foot, 6 inches, a mile, it doesn't matter. They made progress. That's all they have to say. Actually, there's just a form they sign that says, yep, I reviewed their work, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. And you turn that in with your next notification, or if you're choosing to, change your school situation, then you have that to provide to wherever you're going. Ohio's super easy, super low key. We're really fortunate to have the minimalist guidelines. Yeah. So that's pretty much how you do that.
And every state, the requirements are different. So wherever you are, you can Google it, for your state and homeschooling requirements, and it should come up with some websites that you can look at. And we're going to provide, I'll drop a link in the comments here at the end with a resource, like a one page of a bunch of different websites and resources that our team has put together for you. And there's one on there that's where you can go and click on your state, and it'll show you the legal requirements. And so we'll provide that. But the biggest thing is, don't be intimidated by the legal aspect. It sounds like, oh my goodness, this is this huge thing, and do I have to prove all of this stuff? It's check with your state, but for the majority, it's actually pretty relaxed. And like Beth said, you are not required to get permission from your school district, but what you are doing is actually notifying them, because you have a legal right to homeschool your child. So you're not waiting for them to approve it. You're just waiting them to say, okay, we acknowledge that you notified us. And so check with your state, but it is a lot simpler and easier than you would think to go about the legal requirements. And you can also in Facebook groups and stuff get more details about those. But all right, good stuff. Let's start moving on. And Kim asked a question, Kim Dippold. She said, are there any curriculums or programs to teach a second language to your child where the parent could kind of learn along with them? Have you guys done anything with secondary languages yet? Or anything you'd recommend?
No, we haven't really successfully done many languages. We've dabbled in a little bit of Latin. We've dabbled in a little bit of Spanish. Would I say that we've completed any of those? No. We've had some fun.
I know Rosetta Stone has some great programs. It depends on the age of your learner, and Duolingo is another app that you can use for using with your child. There's also a number of textbook curriculums out there that you can use, but definitely based on your child's age, something more for probably because I know your kids are younger, something like Duolingo might be something worth checking out.
There's
also go ahead.
Sorry. There's also something called like Sing Song Spanish and Sing Song Latin, and it's for younger kids, and it's about teaching them through like songs and music and stuff like that. And so those I've looked at those. I've just never made the investment.
Check with your local library too, because a lot of them actually have access to online or textbook, programs for learning a secondary language. So like in Cleveland, where we are, you can actually get free access to Rosetta Stone through the library with a variety of different languages. And a cool benefit to homeschooling is that every state has perks for homeschoolers. Like I know where we are, you can get a homeschooling library card that takes away the need to return the books. Like you don't pay fines. So if you get something out of the library you want to use as a textbook, you don't have to return it in 3 weeks. You can actually keep it for months as you're using it with your child. So there's a lot of cool benefits that a lot of them are free too with homeschooling, but that's a great question. All right, what about socialization? This is I'm sure you guys have gotten this question. If there's a one question that we get, I feel like as homeschoolers more than anything else, it's like, what about socialization? Doesn't my child need to interact with peers and have friends? I'm so worried they're going to grow up and be this like hermit recluse that doesn't know how to interact with the world. And it's kind of, for those who have been homeschooled or homeschooled their child, it sometimes we laugh at it because it's just one of those things that a lot of people think it's a myth about homeschooling. So Mom, why don't you go ahead and address that? Tell us a little bit about the need for socialization in homeschooling.
Okay, what actually homeschoolers are socialized. The good thing about socialization with homeschoolers is the parents can choose how they're going to be socialized and who they're going to be socialized with, as it were. When I worked in the public schools, there was a lot of negative socialization. I worked in the junior high and the high school, and we had, in fact, it was tragic. We had 1 2-year period where we had 3 students commit suicide because of bullying. It was horrendous. I encourage you, if your child is being bullied, please get them out of that situation. It's really tough. And my husband was in the ministry for a number of years, and he saw many adults with wounds as a result of what they'd experienced with negative socialization in school. So you can choose, and not only can you choose who your kids, socialize with, as it were, you can choose their friends and stuff. I mean, my kids still played with the neighborhood kids. They had soccer. They had, all kinds of activities they were involved with other children. They had friends and play dates. But they also were socialized across generations, so they knew how to relate. My daughter went there was like this nursing home ministry, and it was, I think the couple was retired, but they were all either retired or almost retirement age. And she would go with them to a nursing home, and she would play the piano, and they would, touch these people's lives. And so she's working with this couple. My kids could relate to all ages, not just people their own age. And when are you ever going to get hired by a company that says, okay, we're going to divide you and have you work by, ages, So, so a lot of kids, when you bring them home, they're just so relieved to not have that peer pressure. And yet they do relate to other kids too.
There's also, now that homeschooling is legal and that we've had time for homeschooling to develop, I mean, over the past several years, the amount of homeschoolers in the United States is continually increasing. And we're seeing it across all different, all different ethnicities, all different cities, all different types of families. And so lots of people are choosing homeschooling. And because of that, there's a lot of great resources now. And so there's a lot of, like, we are involved in a co-op in our area. So we get together when we're allowed to get together without quarantine. We get together every other Friday and offer a variety of classes to our kids. They get to hang out with their friends. They're learning from a different teacher in that environment. And then we can do everything from field trips to science fairs to, father-daughter dances, and really have a lot of those fun benefits of socialization, but still within this realm of homeschooling. I think one of the biggest myths that I hear out there is that, like, my child is going to be socially awkward if they are not around their peers every day, especially for younger kids. And the truth is that research has kind of debunked that myth, especially for preschoolers and early elementary years. That research suggests that your kid actually doesn't need daily peer interaction. In fact, the most powerful aspects of socialization happen within the family setting. So as they interact with you as a parent or siblings, you know, they have to take turns and all those kind of things. That is giving them the benefit of socialization without having to interact with their peers. So that whole term socialization, about being able to relate to other people, happens in the family context naturally. And it's not something that you have to send your child out of the home in order to get. So let's kind of move on here. How do you homeschool multiple children with different needs and different learning styles? Becky, can you talk to us a little bit about that with 6 kids?
Sure. Right now, I'm homeschooling my 4 older ones. So I still have 2 little kids who aren't even school age yet. So the dynamics change a lot in my home. I guess with multiple children, I group them as much as I can. So for content areas like science or history, I'm grouping the kids together and I'm just altering the lesson based on their level. Maybe my kindergartner or first grader is going to color the history page versus, you know, answering a multiple choice questions. But we're still learning the same kind of topics. And so I definitely try to group the subjects that I can as often as I can. What I love about the, you know, just option of doing is they can learn at their own style. For instance, I have a daughter who she would prefer to lay across the floor of where we're at, and she's listening, but she's also kind of drawing her own letters as she's doing it. And then, you know, I'm doing something with the other kids, whether it's at the board or at their desk. We kind of have a designated area we do school in, but we're all there, but it's just different ways that they're learning. And so it provides me that opportunity to just allow them to explore the best way that they want to learn. And so, yeah, I would say that there's no one size fits all. There's different learning styles. So I try to break up my time a little as well. If one kid is doing some independent work, then I'm doing instructional work with another kid. And then we switch that up. So using your time in ways that just you can, you know, work with each kid in whatever style that they need. That's just the best way I found for myself. I also try to keep the little ones busy, whether I hire, you know, someone to come over to babysit them for a few hours to watch them, or, you know, to keep them busy outside. And then I'm devoted to working with the older kids. So that's with how close my kids are in age, that's what's worked best for us for right now. And yeah, just knowing that there's not like one size fits all kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's good. Beth, do you have any thoughts on like the different learning styles, but also when you have a younger child who's not even school age yet, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's been tricky. I mean, I've always had some younger kids to deal with. Right now, I only have one. But I have found that we have worked around nap time. We've worked around doing school during nap time. I've also found that he is, and of course it depends on the child, but is very content to do school with us, color, sort some blocks, work on some, games. I also have just some things that we bring out during school time. So those are kind of some special toys that they only see. And you know what, I'm not above a well-placed iPad. I mean, I'm not above an iPad with some educational games or an educational movie. I have at times had help in the house too, because I do work as well. So I've had, someone to come and help me out for a few hours. I've relied on my mom or my mother-in-law to kind of step in and help out. But so far, it's worked pretty well. I think, especially in the beginning, your time that you spend doing school is short, maybe an hour at the most. And so you can make that work with younger kids just by kind of making a schedule or working around the younger kids' schedule. So
yeah, that's a great point. And that, that brings up another great thing too. A lot of times I hear people, they're like, well, I want to start homeschooling my kindergartner, but I don't know how I'm going to fill 8 hours of school time every day. Do not fill 8 hours of school time. probably for any age, even high schoolers. And that's another beauty of homeschooling is that when you take away all of the extra things, when you take away bathroom breaks and water breaks and walking down the hallway and waiting for everybody to finish their worksheet and all of those kind of things, the amount of time you actually need to successfully homeschool your child in a given day is so much smaller than you would think. So for a kindergartner, 30 to 60 minutes a day is plenty of time. And for a preschooler, 10 to 20 minutes is plenty of time a day. And another cool thing about homeschooling is you can stack it. So you can decide we're not going to do school on Fridays, or we're going to do fun stuff on Fridays. And you can do your schoolwork Monday through Thursday. And then Friday can be a fun day, or you go somewhere, or you play outside more, or whatever that looks like. And as your child gets older, they might need a little bit more time to complete their work. But even for junior high and high school age, they can usually get it done in more of like a 4-hour period, not an 8-hour period. And that's part of the beauty of homeschooling as well. And you can really capitalize on your strengths. So if you or your spouse has a love for a certain topic, make that part of homeschool. You know, my husband he was an Eagle Scout, so he loves wilderness kind of things. So he likes to do stuff with the girls related to reading maps and understanding a compass. And that's something that is fun for him. It's fun for them, and they're learning. That is all part of education for them. So don't feel like you have to fill a whole school day, and don't feel like it has to fall in the certain school hours. I remember when I was homeschooled, if we had a busy day, sometimes we did what my mom called night school, and we did things in the evening. So if you have young kids and you're also homeschooling a junior high student, you can do some work with them in the evening after the little kids have gone to bed, or while the other parent is entertaining them, or that kind of thing. There's just so many options. I know for us, my husband and I, another question we get is it possible to homeschool if you and your spouse work? And so let's talk about that real quick. My husband and I both work. We both work from home. And so we've kind of created a rhythm. It doesn't have to be a rigid schedule, but we've created a rhythm of times where he's kind of on call and I'm on call, and we alternate days so that I'm focusing on my work while he's the go-to for the kids. And then the next day we swap, and that has been working well for us. Also, just understanding the rhythm of your kid's day, especially if you have little kids, is really helpful, because I know for my 2 almost 3-year-old, there's a certain time in the morning where she's pretty happy to play by herself. But like once we get up to lunchtime, and then after that, she needs a lot more attention. She needs, she's getting tired. She might need a nap. So you can work around nap time with your older children, or you can work during that time where you're in the morning or whenever it is that your younger kids are more happy to play on their own. Just get a feel for the rhythm of your day and go ahead and insert homeschooling into times that it would work naturally. So Beth, you work and your husband works. So how does that work for you guys in terms of homeschooling in the midst of that?
Yes, well, right. We both work. My husband works out of the home usually, and he's a public defender for the city of Cleveland, so he's gone, Monday through Friday. And my dad and I own an insurance agency together, so I am actually out of the house 2 days a week as well. And so that's where I have kind of coordinated with my mom, and she homeschools the boys on the days that I'm not home. On the days that I am home and I'm still, taking care of emails, answering some calls, my boys have always done this, so they have learned that mommy works from home and this is how we do things, and you have to be quiet, and we all we take turns, and so they do schoolwork and I do work emails, and we go back and forth. It works out pretty well. We of course always have a few bumps in the road, and like I said, over time I have had help here in the house with someone who can keep making sure that they're writing their spelling words down while I'm talking to someone on the phone or whatever the case may be. We do start school a little bit later in the day. We start around 10 so that I have an opportunity to get up in the morning, get the day started, clear off any urgent things for my office that need to be handled, and then we can settle in from 10 to 12 and have a good stretch of uninterrupted schoolwork. So
yeah, that's good.
It's a good setup.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. So don't feel like you have to be stuck in somebody else's way of doing it, you can make it work for your family, for your work schedule, for your child's personalities, because all of this is flexible to your needs. So another question we've gotten is, what if your child has an IEP? So what if you decide to pull them out of public school, you're going to hold them, have them at homeschool, but they would normally have an IEP. Maybe they have learning disabilities, some sort of special needs, maybe they're on the autism spectrum. What's available to you as a homeschooling parent, and how can you handle that? And I asked my mom to answer this question because what she does now is she works one-on-one homeschooling students who have IEPs. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Oh, can you unmute yourself? Sorry. Zoom,
I am so sorry. Okay, there are, now I'm going to talk about the state of Ohio, but if you're in another state, you might want to go to your state Department of Education and see what they might have available. The state of Ohio has 2 scholarships available. One is the Autism Scholarship for students who are on the spectrum. And the other is the John and Jon, John Peterson scholarship, and it's for any student with special needs, whether they are like hearing impaired or have emotional problems or dyslexic. For any special needs, they have to have an IEP, but you can pull them out of school, and it provides for an alternative source of schooling. And one of those alternatives is homeschooling. You have to work through a provider, but you can go on the, in Ohio, you can go on the Ohio Department of Education, and we'll drop some links for a lot of this stuff in the comments afterwards. But you can go on their website and see how you can get that. So I homeschool students who are on this. And I think this is so important because there are some special needs students who really flourish in public schools, but there are some that are falling through the cracks. So I want to tell you a little story about a boy that I took on, and he started in 7th grade and he graduated with me. He was on the spectrum, he was being bullied, and as a result of that, he was acting out. He was and they had him in a classroom all by himself with the teacher all day long because of the situation of his acting out and his being bullied. And it was a terrible situation. And his parents finally pulled him out. When I had him, he could only read like 1st grade, on a 1st grade level. They were doing math for developmentally disabled with him, and he was really falling through the cracks. I took him and I taught him how to read using a multi-sensory system, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that at the end. He learned to read by the time he graduated from high school. He was reading on a high school level. He had taken algebra and geometry. He had so much potential that was just being wasted in the school setting. And I was friends with the teacher. And so I'm not downing public schools, but I'm saying they were not able to take care of his needs. And so I think the thing that really stuck with me was the mom saying he is a different person. When he came home from school, he was angry, he was sullen, he was depressed. And now when he comes out, he's smiling and he's happy, and he was able to, instead of, just focusing on his deficits, we were able to find out what his gifts are and bring those out. And he was a totally different person. And I'm having this now with another student who was pulled out of school. She's just a totally different person, her mother says. So sometimes it can really help for students who are falling through the cracks. I tutor these students, but also we kind of piece together their homeschooling. So I do some subjects, their parents may do some subjects. so you can piece together, but there is money available for that. And then the other thing is, if your child is dyslexic, there are a number of great homeschool curriculum for reading. And I just want to mention, make sure you get a reading program based on the Orton Gillingham system of reading, which is a multi-sensory reading. And it talks about phonemes, which, you know, phonetics is part of that, syllables, and it's multi-sensory. And I'm going to drop a link for that also, different homeschool curricula that are based on the Orton Gillingham reading system. So yes, you can homeschool students with IEPs, and you keep your IEP with the district. You still have your IEP meetings every year, and you can bring it through high school. So
can I add in something to that?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
I just wanted to say how we discussed earlier, you're notifying your district with notification papers. That means that you are still identified in the district. You have the same rights and opportunities as any other kid in the district. So it just really means that you're seeking their approval on your curriculum choice, and you have the option of wherever they want to learn, meaning we've chosen at home. So if you feel like your child needs to be tested for a possible disability, or even on the other spectrum, maybe you want them tested gifted and have an IQ test, the district is, I don't want to say obligated, but they have to offer that to you. You are still technically, you are completely eligible to access the school district's resources for those things.
Yeah, can I add another thing? This is a little off special ed, but the districts are also required to let your child participate in any extracurricular activities. And going back to the socialization, you can limit socialization. So for example, my student is on a district soccer team, but she doesn't have the pressure of the peer pressure during the day in terms of you know, the actual school day. So
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about homeschooling is that you still have access, like they've said, to all of those resources that kids in the public school system. You're still paying taxes. Your child still is counted in that district. And so they can play sports through school. They can have IEPs. They can have all of those things even while you're homeschooling. So you can explore what that looks like for your state, but there's so many great options to you. You don't have to be missing out on so many of the benefits that people worry about missing out on. So what about the question, Beth, maybe you can address for us, will my child fall behind? What happens if I feel like my child is behind? Like, am I going to mess them up? And what if I change my mind halfway through the year? What can I do? What are my options?
Okay, well, you can always put your child back in the public schools. They will take them at any time. There's really nothing tricky there. Just call, you know, we're ready to drop them off. They're getting on the bus. So, you know, that there is a certain accountability in being a homeschool parent, in making sure that you are making progress. You know, whether you want to be on a grade level or not. I've always just kept my kids on a grade level, knowing that at some point I anticipated them going into the school system. So we maintained, you know, grade level curriculum every year. We made sure that we didn't finish always, but finished the majority of our textbooks. And then I guess it depends on the person. I'm a firstborn. I'm naturally driven. I didn't need any kind of anybody helping me with that. I have my own enough anxiety keeping everyone on level. But you can do standardized testing every year to make sure that you are making progress year over year. You can make sure that you are staying, you know, at the level with their peers. I know that there's been times when I haven't thought that, and I have real concerns at certain years mostly with my twins. But Caleb successfully transitioned into school, and we did not have any issues. And there were definitely days I felt we watched more SportsCenter than we did school, and yet here he is. He's, you know, successfully made the transition. So it's not as hard as
you think to stay on the level and to keep your kids, moving forward. I think the kids are naturally curious. They naturally want to have some learning. Caleb is not a kid who loves school. He still doesn't love school. But, we successfully accomplished K through 6th grade without, falling behind. So
what was it like transitioning him into school? What did they look for? Like, how did they accept him into that grade level? How did that work?
Actually, I was just thinking about that last night, and I actually had texted with another friend who put her kids in school 2 years ago as well, and just was checking with her what she needed. We put Caleb initially into St. Ambrose, which is a Catholic school, and they required very little of us. Actually, I was shocked. I had records and papers and test scores, and they were just like, "Oh, he's going into 7th grade in the fall?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Okay." What else? And they were like, "Okay, he's going into 7th grade." And they did have him take, we decided that early in the year, so that he was going to go to school that fall. We knew that's where he was headed. So they did have him take the standardized test that they gave their students in, I believe it was May of that year. And then but they did not question any of our test scores, anything. And like I said, I was texting with a friend last night who put her kids into the Brunswick Public Schools, and she said the same thing. She said she actually felt like she spent a lot more time trying to prove to them that her kids were educated than they actually were concerned about. They took her at her word at their grade level. They did have all her paperwork, of course, that she's turned in over the years, her assessments and her notices, but it was very fluid. I mean, getting him into school was very easy. And it was, I think, probably more stressful for me because I felt like it was a test of my homeschooling, what I had done for the last 6 years, had he actually learned anything. But I think, from a standpoint for Caleb, there was a few rocky moments just settling into being in a classroom, being with your peers and stuff like that. But he did great. I mean, it was very good for me too, because Caleb was probably my most difficult child to homeschool, and to have people say, wow, he's very smart. He's so sociable. He loves people. I mean, he's just so good to talk to. He's just so versatile with people and stuff. It was great, and he's doing really well. So I will tell you that I never felt like I did a rigorous education with him. I did not feel that we never spent more than a couple hours. We always homeschooled 4 days a week. He's heading into 10th grade, taking honors and CCT classes, and so I really can't complain. He's done well.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of times when you're considering homeschooling, you worry about the deficit. But when you look at homeschoolers' actual performance as they transition into school, as they go to college, as they go into the workforce, homeschoolers stand out. They excel because they've had the freedom to learn how they learn. And that translates to every context that they're in. I think, we have so many amazing educators in the public education system and private education that are doing everything that they can to help each child learn the way they learn, but there are limits in the classroom, right? And so it's an amazing opportunity when you homeschool to be able to say, oh, you know what? Math, it comes really easy to you. Let's dive a little deeper. Let's let you go a little farther in this. Oh, you need some extra time to understand grammar. All right, let's take a little more time. And it can really actually help your child even get ahead of where they would be in a traditional classroom setting. And I've heard so many great stories of homeschoolers who have really stood out because they had that freedom, that flexibility. So instead of thinking, oh man, are there going to be these deficits? Look at all the incredible benefits that you could have to homeschooling, and the fact that you can choose, like we said at the beginning, each year and even halfway through the year, if you need to make a change, put them back in school. You absolutely have that opportunity. And so this is a kind of a great year if you've been thinking about homeschooling to give it a try. And there's a lot of great support out there. I know we got a question. What co-ops are there available in Northeast Ohio? If you guys want to talk, Becky, do you want to? Becky, actually, I asked her on this call. She is the head of the co-op that I'm a part of and does an amazing job. Can you tell us about Archers, and then maybe a little bit about finding a co-op, what that's like for people?
Sure. There's definitely different co-ops all over Northeast Ohio or wherever you live. I'm sure that there's different opportunities to be part of other homeschoolers, and whether they are doing field trips or we offer different fairs like science fair and geography fair. So it gives an opportunity for the kids to bring their work in and display it to other kids, and have parents come and observe their work as well. So ours is our homeschool group is Archers. We meet about every other week, which kind of gives flexibility for those that still want to really dive into their curriculum at home, but also opportunity, like you said before, to be in front of other moms and dads, getting instruction and being with other kids outside of just their age as well. So so that's Archers. It's been a pleasure to be a part of that group, and just the fellowship with other moms, asking questions, saying, hey, this isn't working. What do you suggest? Or just bouncing ideas off of each other, sharing ideas, co-teaching together, creating science labs together. I think science sometimes, especially as they get older, can be intimidating, and all this equipment that they need. So we have biology labs. We've done physics labs before. So there are other drop-off type programs. There are programs that meet every single week. You have to figure out what works for you and what your family needs.
Yeah, that's good. Another great resource, and this will be in the in the resource link that I put in there, it's HSLDA.org. And what it is it's a national organization that protects homeschoolers legally. It's a great organization to join, because if you were to run into any issues, or even if you have questions about legal requirements when you join, I think it's about $100 a year or so to join, but it provides additional level of legal protection for you as a homeschooler. And they have attorneys that are on their team that are available to you to answer questions. And if you do run into a discrepancy or a legal issue, either with your choice to homeschool or transitioning your child back in, or any of those kind of details, they will actually help provide legal support for you in the midst of that. So there are a ton of great resources like that out there. So another question, and we're getting ready to end here in a few minutes, so I'm going to take two more. One of them is, how do you handle screen time, whether for your student or for your younger kids? I think this is something, there's epic amounts of mom guilt surrounding screen time. So what does it look like? We all know that less screen time is better, but how do we actually implement that and maintain sanity as a homeschooling mom? Or what does that look like? What are your thoughts on that? Anybody?
I can jump in first. I'd say for me, establishing a routine is so important first. So for us, morning works the best. So my kids know that there's no screen time in the morning. That's not even an option. And they have to get their schoolwork done first. That's been used before as a threat or as a goal, actually, even just before they can to get on screen time. But I've honestly have found that as I've given them other ideas, options to be playing outside, it's not always the first thing on their mind, to believe it or not. And so establishing a routine, especially for kids, I mean, they need routine like that, I think is pretty important. And so just monitoring it as far as that is secondary. Our schoolwork obviously comes first.
Any thoughts on that, Beth?
Well, I will say that I'm probably a little bit more laid back on screen time with my kids, but I do feel like I don't worry about it as much because they spend an enormous amount of time doing things, other things, like Becky said. I mean, it's not, I will tell you that they love to play video games. They have, a PS4, they love all that stuff. But I don't worry about it as much because we don't spend 8 hours in a learning environment, in a school sitting, we spend a lot of time outside on a walk, in the backyard on a trampoline, playing baseball, building forts. So they spend a lot more time doing other things than they do screen time. My house is decorated in early American Lego because we have so many Legos and so many Lego sets. So I'm running out of places to put them. But I think you can use it. I mean, and I do use it. If I need to focus on a math lesson or do something, with my older kids, and I have my 4-year-old who's just not cooperating, I'm not afraid to say, here's an episode of, Mickey Mouse. Please sit here just for, 15 minutes while I get this done. But again, we spend a lot of time doing other things. So it's not as big. I'm not going to tell you that we're, living a electronics-free life, because we are certainly not. This quarantine has definitely tested the limits of that. But we're not, it's not as huge of a concern to me because I know that my kids are doing so many other things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, getting in a rhythm and setting the expectation for your kids ahead of time is one of the best tools that you have for limiting screen time. I know for us, if I let my kids watch something at the beginning of the day, it's like, that's what they want to do all day long. And I'm the same way. If I start the day on screens, then I'm like, I think I just want to lay here. So if I set the expectation for them, well, we don't have screens during this time, they stop asking. Like, there might be a transition period, but then they get the idea that this is how we do things and they stop asking. But on the other hand, just like Beth, if I'm really struggling to get something done and I need to use a screen, it's okay to do that and not feel guilty about it. The important thing is that you set that general expectation and then you use it when you need to. But usually the first kind of hump in that routine is the hardest to get over. And then it kind of your kids will understand more what the expectations are. But we're going to answer one more question. You've had so many great questions submitted ahead of time. Just appreciate all of those. But we want to answer one final question, and that is, how do you stay motivated as a mom, just in the midst of all of the craziness and expectations? How do you stay motivated to continue homeschooling your kids, especially when some of your kids may give you a hard time about it? What do you do?
Do you want me to? I can go.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, Beth, actually, Beth, you mentioned this before, but I think keeping in mind, and I'm probably going to use your words, you're not recreating a school day at home. That's not what we're doing. We're not recreating the brick and mortar. You have to think about, like, when I was in the classroom, I was responsible for 30 kids for 40 minutes, and I'm trying to hit all those individuals in a 40-minute span. And my time with each of those kids was really limited. And here, as the parent, you know your child the best, you love your child the most. And so you're giving this individualized time to your kids. And I would go back to being like, that's one of the most important benefits that I see come out of homeschooling, is that I've just gotten to be alongside my kids as they're learning, as they're growing through reading. I was a math teacher, so to teach my kid how to read, it was intimidating to me, to be honest with you. And now that I've just seen progress, it's been so rewarding. So if we're not doing the same thing, we're not trying to do the same thing that they would be doing in school. This is it's a learning process for the parent as well as the kid. But, I think keep in mind that you are meeting your kids where they're at each day. And if you have a bad day, you just improve the next day, you move on. So, I guess, also having friends you can just talk to and say, this is just not a good day. And Beth, you've been great about saying, you know what, just send them outside and restart over again tomorrow. So I think taking pressure off yourself to not recreate what they're doing in a brick and mortar building.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's a value in a co-op, in some sort of learning thing where you have some friends. Homeschooling, you cannot be an island in homeschool, not well anyway. I agree with like Becky's saying, and just friends that I've had through the years, whether it's from my co-op or other people from church, and just saying, this is ridiculous. I don't even know why I'm doing this. I just, and it helps to have moms who are homeschooling, because other moms will just be like, well, send your kid to school. And that's not helpful. You want to have people who you can meet with or can text with and say, this is I mean, this day is ridiculous. They're never going to learn how to read. And, you know, and so that's the benefit, I think, too. I'm just circling back to, you know, being a part of some sort of group or some sort of community, whether it's online or in person, where you have like-minded individuals who are striving to do the same thing and can say to you, you know what, it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to make it through. Send those kids outside, close the books, call it a day, you know, and just refresh and start again tomorrow. February is considered the longest month in homeschooling because it lasts for.
Oh, she just dropped out there.
Yeah, if I can weigh in on that, I would say you are going to have, and like she said, February, it's like, I think every homeschooler wants to quit in February. It's
exactly. Yes. November and February.
Year.
Like, oh my God.
So you have to remember, you have to remind yourself why you're doing this. You have to like call your friends. My sister homeschooled. She was a mentor to me, and I would call her and say, I don't know if I can do this. And she would give me suggestions. But another thing too is make sure that you have established a routine and ground rules in your homeschool. And what this does is you don't have to reinvent the wheel every day. Everything isn't up for grabs every day. And I'm not talking about a schedule like 9 o'clock we do reading and blah, blah, blah. But just a routine and like, so that, because it's a strain if everything's up for grabs every day. And there are days, like Beth said, when you just send everybody outside and okay, it's a wash, you know. But just having those ground rules and a routine will help you kind of get through.
I have one more suggestion. That was some good advice that was given to me. And you know, just sometimes when I'm talking with my husband, I'm like, why are we doing this again? Usually 9 times out of 10, there's something that comes back to reinforces our decision of why we did this in the first place. So if you find yourself in that position, I would suggest maybe writing down a mission statement or writing down your purposes of why you've chosen to homeschool, and go back and revisit those statements that you've written, or some sort of mission statement. And that's always been really helpful too. But yeah, we've had times where we've thought the same thing, and there's been something that has reinforced our decision. And then we go, okay, yeah, we can start a new day and we can move on.
So good. I love that. And I think it's important to remind yourself that sending your kids to school is also hard. Like, homeschooling is hard. There's hard aspects of homeschooling. Absolutely. And there's some days that you're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be a struggle. There are those days. But think about when you send your kids to school, there's also a lot of hard things. Your kids might come home crying because, you know, somebody made fun of them, or trying to get everything coordinated and dropping them off and keeping track of homework. And there's a lot of hard things about sending them to school too. So it's not like, oh, just send them to school and everything will be easy. You know, if you've had your kids in school, that there's, you know, getting them to do their homework. And sometimes the time it takes them to do their homework from school is about the same time it would have taken you to homeschool them in some scenarios, in certain grades. And so recognizing, like, this is not a hard versus easy kind of thing. This is these are different types of challenges that we're taking on. And so I love that idea, like Becky had, of having a mission statement, having a value statement, something that you can refer back to. Oh yeah, this is why we're doing it. Also, don't be afraid to pivot. Like, if something you're doing isn't working, try something else. Find out what other people are doing, or just try a totally different way of doing it. Knowing how you work and how your child works, don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole. So if you're running into the same struggle, the same issue every time, look for an alternative solution to make it a little easier or to run a little smoother. And if you're intimidated, I think one of the deep-seated fears we have is like, do I have what it takes? And let me tell you this, you have what it takes. Doesn't matter, even if you didn't go to college, you don't have a teaching certificate, you know, maybe you didn't grow up with siblings or babysitting, you still have what it takes to homeschool your child, because you have something that no other teacher has. And that is that love and that bond with your child that wants to see them succeed. So even more than any other teacher wants them to succeed, you as their parent have that drive to help them, to support them. And so you have what it takes. That's the most important thing. And if you have a weakness, if maybe you're afraid of math or you're afraid of reading or whatever, find some tools that are have more to offer. Find a video program or an online program that will do more of the teaching for you to help undergird what you see as your weakness, and you can do it. But thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you for all your great questions. And thank you to each of you ladies for taking some time out of your day today to answer questions. I really appreciate it. And we just want to encourage you to really consider if this is the right choice for your family. And if it is, know that you can do it. You have what it takes, and check out the resources and the links. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye.